Hello and welcome to Running on Carbs podcast. I am your host, Coach Val, and I would like to welcome you to episode number 32 of the podcast. Today, we are going to be talking all about the taper weeks before a big race. I myself have a half marathon coming up this weekend, and I am deep into the taper weeks. So I thought this is an ideal time to talk about what that is, how do you do a taper, what happens during a taper and why the heck we do it in the first place. So I'm going to jump into all of that in just a minute and take you straight through what happens during taper and how to survive it. Because I tell you, in the taper weeks, it's quite different than your high mileage or your top end of your training that you just came out of just before you go into your taper. So we'll talk about that too. But this is a really big episode because not only are we talking about the taper, this is also the last episode of October. And tomorrow we are kicking off the Running on Carbs World Vegan Month Pledge. That starts on November 1st. And if you have not heard about that, that means that you're probably not on social media with me. So please get on social media with me. All the links are in the show notes. But there's also a link in the show notes to the World Vegan Month Pledge. And I hope that you will sign up there and receive the emails and tips and encouragement that I will be offering all throughout the month of November. So you may be asking, what is the World Vegan Month Pledge? Well, first, let's start with what is World Vegan Month. World Vegan Month was actually established in 1994. So this year we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of its founding. It was founded to commemorate the forward movement of the vegan ideology, and it was used as a way to note the creation of the vegan society in the United Kingdom 50 years prior to that. So in 1944, that society was created in the United Kingdom. Given the number of animals who'd given their lives for the meals, the society created that date to fall in line with the Halloween holiday and Day of the Dead, to honor the animals that had already been lost to meals before that. So that is the purpose and the reason behind World Vegan Month. But since then, it has grown to be so much more because since 1944, there's been a lot of science and studies surrounding a plant-based or vegan diet and the benefits that it has for everyone, for just the general population, for athletes. And so there's so much to adopting the plant-based lifestyle that a lot of doctors now will recommend that diet, a vegan diet, particularly for those who have or are trying to avoid diseases like heart disease, colon cancer, and other lifestyle diseases, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, um, and so it's something that a lot of doctors will now recommend for health reasons. For endurance athletes and other like runners like ourselves, plant-based diet can reduce inflammation and improve cardiovascular health by improving blood pressure, blood glucose control, and even body weight, of course. So to celebrate this month, I have developed a pledge that will help runners who want to eat more plant-based, because I know that some individuals who listen to this podcast are not plant-based or maybe not fully plant-based, and they just need a little help to get there. So that is what I developed the pledge for. I truly believe that the plant-based diet is an ideal nutritional choice for runners to support both their performance and just general overall health. I know that it has definitely supported me in that. And, just looking around at other runners that I have listened to over the years, and the changes that they also had in their own bodies and their own performance, to me, it just seemed like, an obvious choice. It's also helped me with, as I've spoken on this podcast previously, It's helped me with my own health markers that really are underlying from genetics, not so much lifestyle. So, with my cholesterol levels, I've brought it down 100 points in the 7 years that I've been vegan. That is quite significant for someone who just has the hereditary thing, not necessarily related to diet or lifestyle. So, and all without any type of medications or additional supplements or anything having to do with cholesterol, purely diet and exercise. Um, and by the way, before that, I had the exercise part down, but not the diet, and it was out. It was not going in the right trajectory at the time. So it just cutting back on certain foods just was not enough, at least not for me. But everyone's journey into this lifestyle is very different. Some people just go cold turkey overnight. They're like, okay, 100%, I'm vegan, no more animal products, period. And then for others, it's sort of a stepped process. They might go into vegetarianism first and cut out dairy, or they might cut out red meat but still eat fish. I mean, there's lots of different ways into the plant based lifestyle. And a lot of people come to it for different reasons and at different points. So, if you're new to the plant-based lifestyle or you're just curious about, what does it take to be plant-based, then that's when I invite you to sign up because you are going to benefit from this pledge far more than someone who's already plant-based. Although if you are fully plant-based already and you just want all the tips and recipes and things, or if you want to share it with a friend or loved one, please, jump in, join, share the link. The more the merrier is how I see it. And I'm doing this completely free. There's no cost or anything to take this pledge. It's purely to spread the message and the information and to give people that help and encouragement that they want or that they might need um, and to learn more. So this is purely just philanthropic so that I can help others who have an interest in this lifestyle because I think the healthier that we all are, the better world we have. So please sign up. The link is in the show notes. Again, totally free. And I like to say that with this pledge, you're going to run, walk, run your way into a plant based lifestyle because it's pretty slow and gradual, just as I sort of do with all of my coaching philosophy, right? Build gradually. And so this is no different. The pledge itself is that you challenge yourself to replace just one meal every day with a 100% purely plant based meal. And that means no animal products. So, no butter in there, no eggs, no milk on the cereal. There are other options. Obviously, lots of us are 100% vegan and we eat just fine. So, there's lots of ways to do it. And that's what the tips and such will help you do. Um, so it's just one meal a day. That's why it's so easy to take this pledge and to actually incorporate it. And it doesn't matter if one meal one day is vegan, but then the next day you've got, let's say you were doing lunch, and the next day you have a business meeting where you can't bring your lunch. So maybe that day you do breakfast instead, and then lunch, you do with your business group. So you have flexibility here during the month of November if you need it. Um, but it is just, one meal a day. But the difference that it can make can really be eye-opening. It can affect your mood, it can affect your energy level, and it just gives you that confidence. And I think that mentality of confidence goes much farther than any other physical feeling that you might get from uh, actually incorporating more plants into your diet. That confidence is what tips the scale, in my opinion. So throughout the month of November, you can expect to receive all those supportive emails with tips from me about how to build meals, how to incorporate this in your everyday life, working with the family dynamics, how to uh, deal with cravings if you start to have cravings for certain foods, all sorts of things. I've got a whole list of stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you during the month of November. And then I'm also going to do several live Q&As that will be hosted on YouTube and Instagram. and live streamed there so that I can answer your questions. And of course, in those emails that I'm sending out, I'll let you know dates and times of those lives so that you can jump in with your questions and participate. Or send your questions ahead of time and then watch the recording later, um, if you know when it's going to be. So take the pledge. Come join me. I'm really excited about this. I've never done anything like this before, so I'm very excited to meet all of you and to help you on your journey. And please, please share it widely because that's how we all grow and learn. And there may be someone that you love and know that could really use that health boost, and maybe they just haven't known how to do it, and they can manage this. Like, okay, one meal a day, I think that my friend can manage this and it could really help them. So please share that, and let me see if I can help your friend by giving them that confidence that they need to adjust their diet and take on something new, because they might just get that confidence to replace 2 meals a day, and then maybe Friday all day long is going to be vegan, and then one meal a month of the day for the rest of the week will be vegan also. And they'll step into it slowly and progressively, which is a-okay. It doesn't matter how you get there as long as you get there. And that's what I want to help them do. All right, so link is in the show notes, and I look forward to seeing you in there in the month of November. All right, you want to talk about taper? Let's talk about taper. Okay, so currently I am in the second week of my taper. And what that means is that I've like backed down on all my mileage. I'll get into that a little bit more in just a second. But in my half marathon training plan, I did a 2 week taper, and it came off of my highest mileage week. Then I cut back for 1 week. And then this is my second week leading up to race day. And I've cut back significantly more again. Um, and I am following my 12-week Get Me to the Finish Line program, half marathon race plan. If you want a copy of that, and you would like to also try to follow that plan for you, if you're returning to running, or if this is your first half marathon, and you really just want to, you're not worried about speed and time, but you really just want to make sure you can do endurance and get you to the finish line, it's the ideal plan for that. Because if you've been around here very long, you know that I am recovering from a femoral neck stress fracture, which I talk about quite often. But it has a huge impact on my life and my running. So I do talk about it a lot because of that. And this is my very first half marathon training plan since returning to running. And so this has been an ideal plan to just slowly build gradually over that 12-week period. And there's no speed work in that plan whatsoever. It's purely endurance and confidence building. And I have to say that I am, I finished my last long run last weekend, and it was 12 miles, and I felt really good. And I feel confident going into this half marathon that, yes, I did 12 miles last week. I can do one more mile. I can do it. I can do one more mile and get to the finish line. I have no idea what my pace will be, but I feel strong. And that is the key, to feel strong going up and leading into that race. So why do we taper? That's actually, I think I just said it actually. The magic always happens in the body when we aren't in the midst of breaking down the muscle and the body. So we break it down through workouts. We work the muscles hard, and there's micro tears in the muscles. And when we're done with that, we rest. And then what happens when we rest? Those little micro tears are repaired by the body. And when they're repaired by the body, they were repaired in their new shape, and they get stronger. There's more blood flow. They're accustomed to the work and effort. They're like, oh, I got to be bigger and stronger because now we're doing a little bit more than we did last week. Oh, well, now we're doing a little bit more than the week before. So the muscles are growing and getting stronger as we break them down. So if we were to just keep running, let's say just every day we added another mile. My God, that sounds exhausting. But okay, let's say every day we just added another mile. How long could we really keep that up, realistically keep that up? Not long, because our body has to rest. It has to recover from that hard work. And if we don't give the body time to recover, that means we're not giving the muscles time to get stronger so that it can support us in those hard efforts. So we have to rest. And so that's what we're doing during the taper is we're taking that rest period. We're giving those muscles that have gotten at peak week, they've gotten to their top effort. They're there. And so now it's time for them to take a step back, to build and repair. So keep your protein up, and and get stronger as we rest. But we're still going to be running a little bit. But again, I'll get into the details. But we're still going to run a little bit. But we are not doing those hard efforts. We're not doing the long efforts. We're really cutting back on that volume so that the body has time to repair those muscles, make them stronger, so that when you go into your race, you are at tip top peak performance. I talked a lot about last episode was all about periodized training. And if you recall from that episode, and if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen. But I talked about the pyramid structure. And at the very top of the pyramid is your peak performance. And so that's where we're getting to right now. We're getting to that peak performance. But first, you got to taper before you're there. Okay, so taper. Let me see. Since we aren't using up all of the glycogen stores anymore, so during our peak weeks, we were using lots of glycogen, lots of, energy. Um, but now we're not really using up all of our glycogen stores with workouts all week. Now your body can also increase its own glycogen stores within the liver, within the body, and the muscles, so that when you get to race day, you have that stored energy because you weren't using it during workouts all week. So that's another important reason for a taper is we want to build up those glycogen stores so that you have the necessary fuel and energy in your body to fuel you through that entire race. Oftentimes at a race, you're going to be running a lot faster, a lot harder than you were during your training period. So you're going to need more glycogen stores than you would on a training run. Even if you've been doing long runs for your training, you're not going at that same pace. And so you're not pushing your body as hard as you will on race day. Also, it gives you a chance to mentally recover from all your hard training that you've been doing. I mean, 12 weeks is a long time. So, you're working a full, heavy 10 weeks before you get to maybe your 2-week taper, for example, in this program. So 10 hard, long weeks, that's a long time. That's what, two 2+ months, 2.5 months of solid training, 4 days a week plus strength training, mobility, the whole bit. It's a lot of work. So mentally, you kind of need a break. So I personally like taper weeks. Like by the time you get to your first taper week, you should be looking forward to it. You should be like, oh, I need this. I'm tired, especially if you're doing it like just coming off your biggest week of training and then you start tapering, you should be like, "Whoo, yes, I'm here," and enjoying that lesser effort. So, I mean, we all like to work hard, but there's just got to be a little give and take, a little balance to your training. Give yourself that mental capacity to like gear up for the actual race that's in 2 weeks. So you got to take a break from the training. You gotta give yourself a little boredom. There's nothing wrong with boredom. Um, there are other ways to, keep your mind active as well without being physically active as much as you were before. And lastly, for the taper, the reason why we taper is to reduce the injury risk. I mean, you can never eliminate risk of injury entirely, I come from a background of risk management in real estate, so I can tell you that there is never such thing as risk elimination. There is only such thing as risk management and risk reduction. And so that is what we are doing with the taper as well, is that we are reducing that higher risk of injury by pulling back on that volume before you lead up to your actual race day so that you can feel fresh and ready to go and energize and have all of those glycogen stores and all of that energy to really hit it hard on race day. So, how long is a taper? It really depends on the length of your race that you're training for. So, a marathon taper might be a little bit longer than, say, a half marathon race. Um, for a 5K, you may, depending on your fitness level and also your purpose of the 5K, like, are you running this for your PR record? In that case, you may taper for a few days. Um, if you are just running a fun 5K, you may go out on a 10-mile run the day before. You may not have any taper whatsoever. So it really depends on shorter distance races, whether you're going to taper or not. I typically like to take the day off before any race, no matter what kind of race it is, just so I feel good and also going back to that injury reduction um, goal. I would hate to, like, twist my ankle, the day before I'm going out, with friends to do a fun, 5K turkey trot. It's like, well, that would really be bummer. So, it's just a thing for me that even on short races, I'll taper and not run the day before. But for a half marathon, 1 to 2 weeks, of a taper, you might do a little bit smaller of a taper on the first week of that 2 week and then a little bit more the second week. Um, Again, kind of depends on fitness level. I do prefer the 2 week taper. I did a 3 week taper when I ran my marathon last year, or was it last year? Yeah, it was last year still. Um, so I did a 3 week taper then. I felt like that was just a smidge too much. So I would make an adjustment to that next time I run a marathon. Maybe not cut back quite as much. I would probably still do like a 3 week taper, but maybe a little less of a taper the first week, and then slowly reduce the volume over the full 3 weeks. For this race so far, I feel really good about this taper. Like, I feel like I've got the mileage right. And it's 2 weeks, and the 2 weeks have felt appropriate. So, 2 weeks is a good time for a half marathon. Um, it's often it's going to follow that highest mileage week. And sometimes people will say, well, am I going to lose fitness if I'm not running as much? I mean, that's like the biggest fear, I think, when it comes to the taper, is people are afraid that they're going to lose fitness over that 2 or 3 week period because they're not running at that same high volume, and they think they have to keep up this high intensity, high volume in order to keep their fitness level up. And you have to remember that your fitness it was built like 2 weeks ago. So that's how I always like to think about it, is that whatever work you're putting in today, you will see the benefits of in 2 weeks. So you got to keep going. You can't just like go, "Oh, I ran, this fast today, so that means in 2 weeks, doing nothing in between, I'll still run that fast and maybe faster." Doesn't work that way. It builds on itself over that 2 week time as you're building up. But the point is that whatever effort and work you're putting in now, it's laying that foundation. And then on that foundation, in 2 weeks, you will start to see that pay off. And then on that new foundation, you will build off of that. And it's progressive, and it goes on and on and on and on um, as you train. So, no, you're not going to lose fitness during that time period. What you will do is allow that body to recover and to build and repair, so that when you get to race day, if you've properly calculated your work in between your taper and your race day, then you will be rested and ready to run hard because your body will be well fueled, rested, recovered, and you will have lots of energy come race day. Not to mentioned race day just brings with it tons of energy as it is. So the next question then is, okay, so if I don't lose fitness, do I run when I'm during taper week? Yes, you do. So you will continue to run the same number of days per week that you've been running. So you won't change that, except maybe in the last week, you might change it a little bit because you might have travel days. So there might be a little adjustment, but nothing drastic. But generally for taper weeks, you will run the same number of days. But during those days, you're going to take back the volume. So the number of miles, for example, that you are running during the taper weeks. So in the first of your taper week, we're going to assume a 2-week taper because that's, I mean, half marathons are so common. So in the first week, excuse me, of your 2-week taper, um, you're going to reduce the volume like you would in, say, like a cutback week, maybe a little bit more than that, slightly more than in a cutback week. And a cutback week is, if you're not familiar with it, a cutback week is a week during your full plan where you are cutting back in mileage to, again, same concept, rest and recover before you go after your next level of hard effort. So you build those into your program, into your training plan, so that you aren't overloading the body and you're giving it time every couple of weeks to kind of back off on the hard efforts so that you can come back stronger the following week and then continue on progressing into your plan. So in the taper week, the first week, we're going to reduce volume like you would in a cutback week. Like I said, a cutback week plus, plus a little. Then on the second week of your taper, you're going to cut that back even further as far as the volume. If your plan has been incorporating speed work, like tempo runs or interval work or anything like that, then you can keep the speed work, but you're going to cut that down in volume as well. So, for example, if you are running, I don't know, maybe you're doing intervals and you're doing 10 intervals of, 5K pace or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Then you're going to take that back to maybe 5 intervals, not 10. So you're going to cut way back on your speed work. And again, this goes back to injury prevention. And it also goes back to you are not going to build any more speed. The week before the marathon or the half marathon, you will not be improving your speed because your interval work, if anything, it can be a detriment to your training. So you really want to scale that back significantly on your speed work. But you do want to keep runs going. And a little bit of speed work is still good. I mean, it gets the heart rate up, if it's already been in your plan, of course, but it gets the heart rate up. It's good for mental stress and things like that. So it's fine if that's something that you've been training with the whole time, but you most certainly 100% do not want to add any speed work during this taper weeks if you have not already been training that way. Okay, so don't add any speed work. That is a recipe for disaster and injury. So the next question then is, do I continue strength training? And the answer there is yes, mostly. Yes, mostly. So if you're doing a 2-week taper, then it's okay to keep some strength training in the first week. So 2 weeks taper, the first of their 2 weeks taper, you can go ahead and keep your strength training in there, whatever program you've been following up till then. But I would recommend that the week of your race that you take out strength training pretty much entirely, at least when it comes to heavy strength training. I would say if you're doing things like mobility work or if there's any physical therapy exercises that you've been doing that incorporate strength, any body weight exercises, those are all okay to keep in your plan because those are keeping you tuned, sort of like, finely tuned. So keep those types of things in. But when it comes to, increasing your Bulgarian deadlift weight, not the week of the race. Okay, that's save it for afterward. Save it for your recovery period after the race. So um, let's wait on that. We don't need DOMS the day of your race. So no delayed onset muscle soreness as you're going into your very important race that you've just trained 3 months for. So strength training is some is okay, but not others. Um, Taper weeks are really good time also to see your alternative healthcare practitioners. So if you like to go to acupuncture or if you have a chiropractor that you see, this is a really good time to go see them and get your last little tune-ups in before your race. If you like to go to a sports massage, do that maybe in the first week of your taper. I wouldn't recommend that on your second taper week because, again, depending on your masseuse, you could come out of there with a little bit of soreness or residual or muscle sort of breakdown or tissue breakdown, fascia breakdown. And you really want to make sure all that's intact and nice and tight and bouncy. So you don't really want to relax all that away the week before your race, but maybe the week before you might be okay then if you really want to. But as far as like chiropractor, if it's something that you do on a regular basis, again, I wouldn't recommend starting any of this the 2 week taper time. This is something that you should know that you're already accustomed to. You don't know how you're going to react. You don't know, you just don't know. There's so many unknowns that we just don't want to mess with it. You've trained too hard to get to this point that we really want to set you up for the best success on race day. And that is honestly what this taper is all about, is setting you up for success on race day. Um, how should you eat during the taper weeks? That comes up too because your volume of running has come down significantly. I think a lot of people are worried about gaining weight during these 2 weeks. I wouldn't worry too much about that if you otherwise have a very healthy diet, especially if you're plant based already. You might make some adjustments to your macronutrients, your carbs, fats, and proteins to account for your less running, but you really want to keep that up because you want to make sure that your energy stores are intact. As a matter of fact, you may want to bump up your carbohydrate intake and maybe even your protein intake for recovery. So, first week of taper, just eat normally, however you normally would eat. I wouldn't worry about it one way or the other. Maybe increase those carbs again slightly on race week so that you've really tapped out, and are topped off your glycogen stores. And then before the race, maybe 2 or 3 days before the race, you can go ahead and bump up your carbs even more to make sure that you're really just like topped off. Remember, if you're going to be increasing carbs, especially if they're simple carbs right before a race, you want to increase your water intake, or it can really have a detrimental effect on your gut. Um, and if you're not used to taking in that number of carbs, you may feel really icky. So, like bloated, gassy, the whole bit, constipated. And so that is absolutely not what you want going into race day. So make sure that if you're bumping up those simple carbs and you're not accustomed to simple carbs, then you're putting extra water into your body as well. And then add in some electrolytes here and there to make sure that your body's absorbing the water that you're drinking. If you're doing a marathon, then I would recommend following a very specific carb load diet, like, okay, what's your weight? What are you running, et cetera, how long you're going to be out there, and having a really specific carb load plan for a marathon. I've done long runs without carb loading. I've done long runs and marathon with carb loading. And I have to say that with carb loading, huge difference. And most people will agree with that as well. With a half marathon, your needs are slightly more like fast burning carbs than they are long lasting, depending on your pace. So, on a course that's longer, you're going to need, or not a course, but like if you are out on the course longer than maybe your faster counterparts, then you're going to need more glycogen stores. So keep that in mind. Someone who is faster is going to finish that course in less time, where you still might be out there for another hour. And so you're going to need more energy. So make sure you keep that in mind. Pace is going to have an impact on your storage, on your glycogen storage needs, and your immediate glucose intake while on the course. So like gels and things like that. Um, Make sure that you're eating regular food. And when I say regular food, I mean regular for you. So, nothing new and wild if you're not accustomed to it. Um, Make sure you're eating just your normal food. So, not a time to try a bunch of new recipes. Not yet. Again, after the race, go for it. Um, Hydrate with lots of water and electrolytes. That is the one thing that was my downfall. I didn't have enough water with me when I went, um, when I did my marathon. So prior to the race and the night before, I did not hydrate as well as I should have because I was saving it for race day. And that's fine and all, but problem was that I really needed it the night before. So make sure you're hydrating all week long before your race, and then bump that up again a little bit more with some electrolytes before race day. Um, and this all comes, I mean, we're kind of blurring the lines right now between taper and race prep, but it all happens simultaneously as you get closer and closer to race day. If you're traveling, that kind of throws a whole nother monkey wrench in it. Um, Try to order meals with ingredients that you recognize and that you're accustomed to and that you eat most often. Personally, I love to go to Chipotle when I'm on the road if there's nothing else around, because I'm used to the food. It's just rice and beans and some salsa, guacamole, peppers. So it's super simple. Um, and maybe leave off the spicy hot stuff. If I don't have to worry about that because I don't eat spicy, but if you do, you may want to leave that off unless that's something like you thrive on. But for others of us with, weak constitutions when it comes to spicy stuff, we'll leave that off. Um, but work with what, or eat what works with your gut and what works with you. By the way, no curry unless you are like a glutton for punishment, or if you've just grown up on this stuff and you're like, I eat curry every day. This is my favorite food. Fine, if that's who you are. Personally, I had a meal of curry at lunch. And then at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, something like that, I tried to do a plyometric workout. Worst workout I ever had in my entire life. Um, that curry, like, sat in my stomach like a rock, and it was delicious, of course, going down, but curry and plyo on top of curry, bad mix. So I just cannot imagine trying to run a half marathon or a marathon with curry sitting in my gut from the night before. So I don't know, maybe it's a personal problem, but I thought maybe I'd share that as a PSA, in case you didn't think of it. But try to again eat at restaurants if you're traveling that you are familiar with and that you can recognize the ingredients as something that you normally eat. So nothing new, again, just don't add in new stuff if you can help it. So we've talked a lot about the things that you should do during the taper. Let's talk a little bit about what maybe you don't want to do during the taper. This is a big one, and I actually see this on social media all the time, and it breaks my heart when I read it. Um, but don't run a half marathon during your taper if you've never run a half marathon before, just to see if you can do it. That is what your training plan is for. If you have followed a real training plan and you have done a good job of following your plan, then I assure you, barring anything unforeseen, you will finish the half marathon. The problem when I see that isn't so much that the person went out and did that, it's like, you know, you're your own person. You want to run a half marathon before you're, fully trained? Okay. But the problem is that they wanted to beat their time on race day. And I question whether that will be possible because they just threw their effort out the window. They weren't ready. They didn't have their taper. They didn't really finish their plan, yet they ran a hard half marathon, like pace and everything, like, "Oh, look, I could run the half marathon. I did it at this pace. So next weekend, I should get it at, an even faster pace." Mm, I highly doubt it because your body has to recover from that hard effort that it's never done before because that was their first half marathon because that's where they were trying to see if they could do it. So now your body has to recover. It's in recovery mode during that time. And if this is your first half marathon, you ran it that hard, faster and harder than you did during your training sessions, then you already spent that energy. You're never going to know what your pace would have actually been with a proper recovery and taper on race day. So you want to be fresh on race day. You want to be rested. You want to be, well hydrated, fueled, the whole bit, like we've been talking about, because you really want to just set yourself up for success. And so I really feel like when people do that, they just fully wasted their fitness on a training run. I mean, that's it. You just wasted your fitness. You really don't know what you would have done on race day when you go out and do that. So I realize it's tempting because we're excited. That goes back to the mental side of this taper. During the taper, you're a little bored, you're a little excited because you got a race coming up. Just use that excitement, build into that excitement. Don't give in to the excitement and, waste your fitness on a training run. It's so pointless. And that's why I mean it breaks my heart when I see that because I'm like, gosh, if they would have just saved it, they would have just properly tapered, what could they have done? What could they have accomplished with the energy of the crowd around them? Full fitness, well rested, well hydrated. What could they have actually have done? They think they did great, but what could they have actually accomplished if they would have actually tapered properly? I don't know. We'll never know. They'll have to go through another training plan and see what they do next time, I guess. So, but I don't want that for you. I want you to have a successful race. So, what else should you not do? The other thing you shouldn't do is start any new exercise routines. Again, just save them for post race. You're going to have a little recovery period for maybe a week or so where maybe aren't running at all, depending on, again, your starting fitness level, or you have really easy runs during the first week after the race and then start your new fitness program. Have fun with it. This is the time to try new things is after the race. Don't start it before. Let's do all the things we've already talked about. Also, don't stop moving. So you don't want to start anything new, but you don't want to stop moving either because too much rest can have the opposite effect. And now your muscles start to like go, oh, okay, I'm kind of relaxed here. Your energy gets real low. We don't want to just stop moving. You still want to keep your fitness going and your running going and keep your energy up and all the reasons that we run in the first place. So we're done with the don'ts. Now I'm going to go back to some do's. Do trust your plan. This is a big one. If you have a good plan and you followed it up until the taper, continue to trust your plan. There is a method to the madness when it comes to the taper, as we have been talking about for the last 30 minutes. There is a method to the madness. Trust it. Trust your plan. Trust you did everything you could do. And now you're going to taper. And now you're going to have the best race at your peak performance, whatever that may be, on race day. So the taper, just like conversational runs, they seem counterintuitive. But again, there is scientific method to this whole madness for both the conversational run and the taper. And you just need to trust in the process. And I think once you do it, like if this is the first time you've tapered, when you go into a taper, You may kind of question it, just trust it. And then after you get through it, you'll go, ah, okay, I get it. And then by the next one, you kind of, tweak it a little here and there so you can have little slight improvements every time. And then you really trust it. But you just got to go in blind faith the first time. But now that you're tapering, you're not running as much. So you probably have a little extra time on your hands. Use that time during the taper for, and the shorter runs that don't take as much time in the morning or whenever you do them, to spend more time on your social relationships, your family, things like that. People that maybe you have been sort of setting aside as you concentrated and focused on all of this running that you're doing and all your strength training and your mobility work and your eating habits, and it can take a lot of time and effort. So take this taper time to focus on those relationships that maybe weren't giving all the TLC to that you would normally give. So give them some little TLC. And then also, if you have any other hobbies, maybe you do, some people do, some runners. I don't know who they are, but you might have other hobbies. If you have other hobbies, um, then set some time aside and go do those things too. Maybe hopefully they're not like super active hobbies like, basketball or something. But maybe you like to sew. This is a good time to do sewing hobbies, crocheting, things like that. um, so while you're in taper, you're also going to have some more time for some planning. So, this is a good time also to plan your post race recovery, and what that's going to be and what you're going to do after the race. Because I tell you, the next the next episode I record here could be the post race blues, because those often come right after, because there's a big buildup and then there's this letdown. So one way to reduce that letdown is to plan ahead and to know what you're going to do following the race. And that way you already have a plan, so you don't have to figure it all out when you're mentally drained and physically drained, and but you still want to keep moving. So plan it out ahead of time. Um, once you've allowed some sufficient recovery for like the acute recovery, like a week or so, then decide what your next maybe 1 to 3 weeks will look like after that. This is a really good time to increase strength training. If you have not been doing plyometrics, it might be a good time to introduce some plyometrics. That's personally what I plan to do in my training, or in my training after my race. Is I'll be incorporating more plyometrics work and more strength training. Work on any of the weaknesses or imbalances that you may have noticed during this training plan. This is a really great time to incorporate more physical therapy exercises to really isolate those imbalances. So, this is a good time to focus on those things before you go into another training plan, like full training plan. And I said 1 to 3 weeks, but really extend this phase out as long as you need it. So, however long you need to do these extra strength work, to run easy without a lot of structure, um, this is the time to do that, and just take whatever time you need. There's no rush. Nobody's there telling you have to run, sign up for your next race in 6 months. Just take it easy. So enjoy it, but have a plan, because otherwise it gets a little overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people. And then at that point, start planning for your next training cycle. Even if it's more like just dreaming at this point, um, it's always good to have a little dream kind of out there in the future, something to look forward to. So I also like to build in shorter training plans after long runs. So not long runs, but like long training plan runs. So if I did a half marathon training plan, it was a 12-week plan. I'll take my recovery period, whatever time I need. I don't know. I usually do like 3 to 5 weeks or so ish, something like that. And then I might do a shorter training plan, like maybe a 8-week 5K training plan, and work on speed work. Um, and and then try to do a nice 5K at the end of that and see if I can improve my 5K plan, or sorry, 5K race time. Um, And then after that short plan, I'll do another recovery, and then I'll go into a longer training plan after that again. So I kind of try to alternate throughout the year with my different periodized training plans of different lengths. And so while you're in your taper week right now, this might be a good time to plan out your next maybe two periodized plans to have an idea of where you're going. Of course, they're not set in stone. I wouldn't sign up for any races. I wouldn't pay for anything at this point because you're not really sure just yet how they will all work out. But having a nice penciled in plan for the next few months, it gives you that sense of knowing where you're going. And again, it helps to reduce and eliminate that post race blues that can come oftentimes after a race. So, okay, that is my episode for you today. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got something out of it and you know what to do in your taper. I have got, let's see, where are we? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I've got 4 days. 4 days until my race. I'm super excited. I'm calling this my redemption half marathon because I have redeemed myself back to health through a lot of effort and work, by the way, for both, recovering from the stress fracture and then also the, return to running effort. It has been a long road. And so this is a very hard fought half marathon that I am running on Sunday. I'll be running the Santa Barbara Half Marathon, and it is going to be a family reunion of sorts. I'm super excited because I've got a big cheering squad with me this time, and I've never had that before. It's usually just my sister and I, which is lovely, and I love that. But this time we've got a big group. I've got my nieces, my son, his girlfriend, my sister, her boyfriend. We've got a whole crowd. So I am so excited about this race. I will do an episode and give you the full recap afterward because I'm sure I will not be able to help myself. Number one, because I'll just be too excited. But I tell you, leading up to it, my energy is up. I'm excited, but I'm enjoying my taper as well. So I hope you enjoy your taper. Good luck on your next race. And if I could be of any help, of course, please reach out. And don't forget, sign up for the World Vegan Month Pledge. The link is in the show notes. It'll take you literally 3 seconds to sign up, and then you're in. So share it with your friends, bring everybody. Let's make it a group. All right, everybody, have a great week. I will see you after the race next week on on this channel, wherever you listen. And in the meantime, run your best life on carbs. I'm Coach Val, and I will see you next time. Take care.